Honorable Cabinet Ministers present, Honorable Members of Parliament, National Assembly, local government leadership, government officials present, the diplomatic community and development partners, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. Today, changes in our environment are no longer just a distant risk for the Gambia. We are already grappling with them as they shape the economic outcomes, spatial development, fiscal stability, and the economy's ability to grow and generate jobs. As will be highlighted in the Country Climate Development Report, the CCDR, natural disasters and related shocks could reduce the Gambia's GDP by up to 9.3% by 2050 under a business as usual pathway, placing growth, fiscal stability, and poverty reduction at risk. At the same time, the CCDR makes clear that these risks are not evenly distributed. Urban and coastal areas, particularly Banjul, are among the most exposed, with coastal assets worth over 90% of GDP at risk under high sea level rise scenarios. This event is therefore timely and critical. It provides a platform to move from diagnosis to action, from identifying risks to mobilizing the investments and partnerships needed to address them at scale. Your Excellency, with your permission, let me emphasize one key message. Attention to environmental risks and natural disasters is not a parallel agenda. It is central to sustainable development. For the Gambia, this attention is very crucial for the development pathway. It's about protecting the development gains, reducing vulnerability, and unlocking future growth. The CCDR shows that the cost of inaction is high. At the same time, the CCDR also shows that early and targeted investments can significantly reduce these risks, often with very high economic returns. The CCDR is informed by various analytical documents, and most especially by the Green Investment Climate Diagnostic that will also be presented today, which shows that agriculture has the potential to unlock new opportunities, boost food supply, create quality jobs, and enable climate resilience for smallholder farmers. In particular, investments in heat resilience and coastal protection offer some of the strongest returns available to the economy. Your Excellency, Vice President, Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, the CCDR identifies clear priorities across key sectors. In energy, reducing costs, improving reliability, and expanding renewable energy are critical, both to reduce fiscal risks and to enable private sector growth. The World Bank Group's support to the energy sector, including grid modernization and generation enhancement through solar investments, demonstrates how climate-aligned investment can deliver both resilience and economic benefits. In coastal and urban systems, the focus is on reducing exposure to rising sea levels. Through the World Bank Group supported programs, such as the West Africa Coastal Areas Resilience Investment Project, the WACA project, and the Tourism Diversification and Resilience Project, and other related investments, we're supporting flood risk reduction, coastal protection, and climate resilient urban development particularly in high-risk areas such as the Greater Banjul area, including within the tourism development area. These investments are not only protective, they are enablers of growth, enablers of job creation, but more importantly, safeguarding tourism assets, infrastructure, and livelihoods. On disaster financing, the CCDR highlights the importance of moving from reactive to proactive systems. Instruments such as the Catastrophe Deferred Drawdown Option, the CAT-DDO, and the instruments such as the Catastrophe Deferred Drawdown Option, the CAT-DDO, and the Gambia has an approved CAT-DDO, provide rapid liquidity in times of crisis and are a critical pillar of fiscal resilience, helping governments respond quickly while protecting public funds to attaining the Paris Agreement. The biggest challenge now is implementation. Turning policy ambition into bankable pipeline of resilient projects with sustainable and programmatic financing and measurable results. In many cases, public investment must come first to create the enabling environment, to reduce risk, provide essential public goods, and to crowd in private capital. For example, investments in coastal protection and urban resilience will play a catalytic role in unlocking private investment in tourism, infrastructure, and the service industry, and with the potential for creating hundreds of jobs. At the same time, the national budget remains a central pillar. It must continue to support core systems and institutions, data infrastructure, planning, and risk financing mechanisms. These are the foundations upon which climate action and investment depend. Your Excellency, Vice President, Honorable Ministers, and ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, allow me to point out that the CDR is not just a report. It's a roadmap for action. It provides a clear framework to scale up climate-aligned investment, mobilize private capital, and ensure that climate action translates into resilience, inclusive growth, and ultimately jobs. The World Bank Group remains fully committed to supporting the Gambia in this journey, working together with the government, the private sector, and other development partners. We can turn the risks into opportunities for sustainable, inclusive development. I look forward to the discussions today and to the partnerships that will emerge from them. Jelly Jeff, thank you very much for your attention. And, before PS comes in, the next speaker will be our practice manager who covers the environment area, but I'll allow PS to introduce her formally. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Franklin, for those thoughtful remarks and for the World Bank Group's continued commitment to supporting the Gambia, climate resilience and sustainable development efforts. I think you have done my job for me. For the next speaker, building on those reflections, it is now my pleasure to invite our next speaker, the World Bank Group's practice manager, Ms. Alisa Barodi, to deliver her remarks and share insights on the significance of the CCDR. Alisa?
Your Excellency, Vice President Mohamed Jallow, Honorable Cabinet Ministers, distinguished government officials, private sector leaders, development partners and diplomatic community, civil society representatives, press and media houses, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. I was introduced as the practice manager for environment. I cover West and Central Africa, and I cover 22 countries, and most of them now have a country climate and development report. And it's really nice to see Gambia join that group, because I find these reports are super helpful to actually informing and providing numbers and statistics that should be useful to the government and others in decision making. Let me start by saying something that we've all observed. In recent years, across the Gambia and a number of other countries, we've seen floods that have become more frequent and last longer. We've seen farmers struggle with shorter and less predictable rainy seasons. We've seen coastal areas gradually lose land, and with it, homes, livelihoods, and economic opportunities. And these experiences are not isolated. They're part of a broader shift, and they're shaping the way Gambians and others have to grow, invest, and plan for the future. The Country Climate and Development Report should bring all these realities into a sharper focus. It shows that while the Gambia contributes very, very little to global emissions, it's among the countries most exposed to climate risk. And more than 60% of the population living in coastal and urban areas where you have these issues of flooding, erosion, and extreme heat is highest. So these risks are not only environmental, they're economic, they're social, and they're fiscal. And what makes this challenge more complex is the structure of the economy. Agriculture contributes and supports the livelihoods of the majority of the Gambians, and yet contributes only 1/5 of national output. This means that when climate shocks affect agriculture, the impact extends far beyond the sector, affecting incomes, food security, and overall economic stability. At the same time, a large share of the workforce remains in informal employment, limiting resilience and ability to absorb shocks. Excellency, the report shows that if current trends continue, climate change would reduce Gambia's GDP by up to 9% by 2040 and 13% by 2050. These are significant numbers. It's not just the statistics, but I hope we show in the report that the combination of factors we're already observing is what results in these numbers. Lower productivity due to extreme heat, declining agricultural yields, damage to infrastructure, rising pressures on public finances. And these are types of pressures that can slow growth and constrain development over time, and they actually come at a time when additional pressures are coming at us from various geopolitical fields. But the CCDR also delivers a message of hope and possibility. It's not just about risk, it's how we deal with it and how we make the right investment and policy choices that can reduce these losses. The question before us, therefore, is not whether to act, it's how we act and how quickly we act. From our engagement in the Gambia, 3 priorities stand out. First, we must protect what matters most. So in a country like the Gambia, resilience is closely tied to place. Protecting Banjul and the greater Banjul area is not about managing climate risk, it's about safeguarding the country's economic center, its institutions, and its future development trajectory. Investments in coastal protection, urban drainage, and risk-informed spatial planning are essential in the short term, while preparing by 2050 for possible relocation of the capital city and development of new growth opportunities in safer, more resilient new urban hubs inland. I know that's not an easy message, but I hope this is a useful aspect of this report in what it outlines and what's coming down the line at us. Second, investments have to be unlocked. There are more opportunities in different sectors: renewable energy, tourism, agribusiness. But these opportunities are currently constrained by high energy costs, access to finance, and infrastructure gaps. I know this is at the foremost of the government's thinking. So what can be done to unlock some of these constraints is important. And what's also important is enabling the private sector to be able to take on board some angles that would allow for that growth and to also scale up climate resilient investments. The third point is about developing ambitious plans for climate action. The Gambia has a strong and ambitious policy framework for climate and development, but as our country representative said, the next phase is really about implementation. And this will require coordination across institutions, better integration of climate considerations, budgeting, a focus on translating priorities into bankable, scalable projects. It's also about making us as development partners work more closely together to help bring about some of these changes. The challenge is no longer about designing strategies, it's about really executing them effectively and efficiently. The lessons from other countries in the region that have launched their CCDRs shows that sequencing also matters. Public investment can play a catalytic role. Investments in coastal protection, energy systems and urban infrastructure do more than reduce risk. They enable conditions for private investment to follow, opening new markets and products for exports. In this way, public and private action must work together to deliver results at scale. I've talked here about investments, but the key role also for government is on policy and what policy changes can be made to really also enable an avenue that allows for bringing in climate-informed decisions. Let me conclude with a simple reflection. The Country Climate and Development Report is not just a technical report. It's one that is meant to really show how opportunities and risks can be taken on board and to reflect each other so opportunities can really be brought to the fore if the country acts early. It highlights the importance of making development choices today that strengthen resilience, support diversification across sectors, reduce long-term socio-economic vulnerability, and ensure sustainable and inclusive development. The Gambia already demonstrated resilience and progress in recent years. It's not often, Excellency, that I have the opportunity of being with so many of your cabinet in one place at one time. In fact, this is one of the CCDRs that has been amazing in collecting the government around the table. So really thank you for that. If there's one message I'd like to leave you with, it's please, any decision going forward that is for investments or policy, please make it climate informed. It will just bring to bear those investments and make them much more fruitful. On that point, I would like to echo what our country representative said also, that the World Bank Group remains fully committed to supporting the Gambia in this journey. And hopefully, with working with the government, with private sectors and with communities, we can turn these challenges into pathways for sustainable and inclusive growth. On that note, I'd like to express my appreciation for the warm welcome and to thank you very much for being here. Thank you. And Chair Richard.
Thank you once again, Elisa, for those insightful remarks and for the World Bank Group's continued partnership and support. We will now hear from the Honorable Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources, Honorable Rohit John Manjang, who will provide reflections on the country's climate priorities and the role of this report in advancing environmental sustainability and resilience. Honorable Minister.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Good morning, all here present. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, Mohamed B.S. Jallow, thank you for again leading us on our climate action. The Cabinet Ministers here present, please allow me to call them by name, because I think this is showing that the government of His Excellency President Adama Barrow is so dearly concerned and the political will is very high under his leadership with respect to supporting climate action. We have in our midst, of course, I don't know who is the host here, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable CD Keita. We are competing among this. Is it climate or is it finance? But I think I want to give it to finance because they are now going to support the timely implementation of all that has been highlighted in this report. And we have the Minister for Defense. One would say, why defense? But climate change is everybody's business. And we have seen now that we are seeing the wars that are happening, they are really affecting and putting more pressure on the impact of climate change. We have the Minister for Agriculture, Honorable Demba Savali. I don't even need to tell you, agriculture is the driving stone for climate change, climate action. If nothing is being right on agriculture, we will fail in all that we do. We have the Minister for Digital Economy. Yes, we have to get the digital economy right for us to be able to innovate our actions. Honorable, you're welcome and thank you. And the Public Service Minister, he is an all-rounder. He is the Minister for everyone here present. Honorable Boy, you're welcome. Honorable Minister for Tourism, Honorable Abdul Job, you've heard from the World Bank's presentation that the tourism sector has a very key and important role with respect to this report, but also on climate action. Of course, the Minister for Lands and Regional Government and Religious Affairs, they are also very critical. We cannot do anything without land. We need land for all our endeavors. Honorable, you're welcome. We are in this together. And then we have the Minister for Youth and Sports. The young people are the most vulnerable to climate-induced impacts. So he's not here for us, he's here for his team. But then also here to represent government. Thank you all for coming. We have more ministers that have come, but then they are also attending to other matters. I was expecting information minister, maybe he is late, that's why he doesn't want to come, but he was also on the radio. But I keep telling him, come even if you are going to come 1 minute before the program ends. Maybe we'll see him soon. And we have the World Bank Group. Allow me to recognize their presence. Lisa, thank you so much. We met in Nouakchott last week, and she was telling me that we are coming. I said, I know you're coming, because we're going to have the World Bank lead this important report launch. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the support to the Gambia, but also to the sub-region. Only one country cannot do it and succeed. We need all hands on deck. And Franklin, thank you for leading the show when it comes to World Bank. The Gambia being the eye for World Bank in the Gambia. We are happy to the continuous support. And to other development partners, we have the IMF here, we have other key units, the EU, the FAO is here, and others. Please allow me not to mention them, otherwise I'll be annoyed of myself. But I also recognize other key ministries here. Thank you, PS, for coordinating this. I was concerned when my PS is not in now, but I know that finance is going to take the lead. And thank you to our partners, the private sector, and the other NGOs. We have the executive coordinators of Banjul and Serekunda here present, and they're very critical for all climate action because the greater Banjul area is the most contributor because it's heavily and densely populated. So all actions must start with the greater Banjul areas with respect to climate change. We have our partners, the other institutions, we have directors, we have permanent secretaries, deputy permanent secretaries. The Minister of Energy has asked me specially to convey his apologies. He is unavoidably absent. He even cut his trip short, saying that he was going to come today, thinking that it was Wednesday. Then I told him, no, it's today. He said, oh, he has made a very, very, very important decision. But again, I think he's also represented the Gambia somewhere else. But his team is here. He has asked his entire team to be here, from the permanent secretary to all directors to attend. We have the media, and we have my ministry also here present, and all projects are here. But specifically the Worker project, I've seen them all because they have been behind the coordination of this event. Thank you all for supporting this launch. I do not have much to say. All has been said by the World Bank team. The data has been given to you, and I don't want to scare us, but we have the time, we have the leverage, we have the report, we have the resources, we have the political will, and we have the partner support to deliver actions and timely actions. 13% here to 2050 is a lot from our GDP. 9% from here to 2040 is a lot from our GDP. But not to scare us. It is saying if no action is taken. I think that is very clear. And we can only take action if we are informed. And we cannot be informed if we don't have the right data. So here is the CCRD report, that's the Country Climate Development Report. So it is telling us that we need to have the touch to guide us. And the touch is the report. So with the report, we are now going to get the data. We are going to get the scientific analysis to tell us that if you do not do X, X will happen, Y would happen. If you don't take, even if you do X, for example, whatever you want to do, you think it's going to be at least maybe economically viable today, but it can tell you that in the future it's going to hamper your environment. And it's even going to cost you more in the future, in the long run. So it's just going to serve as a guide. And in whatever we do, we need a guide. Without a clear guide, a scientific guide, the financial guide, we cannot be able to make informed decisions. And climate change is a whole of government, and not only government, it's everybody's business. No matter what's your age, where you are, it's everybody's business, because it's just like the sun. When the sun is shining, it does not choose where to shine. So long as you are within that range, it affects you. So climate change is like that. Otherwise, Gambia would have been spared, because we only contributed 0.01% to the entire crisis. So why we? But because there is no boundary. And then that is why we also have to be part of the actions. And we cannot be part of the action if we don't have an informed data. And this is why this moment is very important. And I want to tell you, having the cabinet ministers present shows you that the Gambia knows that we are a small country. If no action is taken, just a few meters sea level rise is going to submerge 50% of our capital, if not more. So meaning, for me, I now saying, looking at the way the climate impact is aggravating, if you do not do anything, no action is taken here to 2030, you will lose, or even closer to that, you will lose the entire Banjul. And then that's scary, but it's saying if no action is taken. So we have the leverage, and then timely action, not no action. We cannot wait here to 2050 and then now start rushing. It cannot be a firefighting moment. We have to raise with actions, and then we have to be timely with that. And that information is here ready under the CCRD. We are grateful for the World Bank for the support, but again, the participation of the private sector can only be possible if we have the right data to engage with them and also to call them on the discussion table. And that's the essence of this. For the Minister of Environment, our key role is to coordinate. I keep saying when I make my reports in cabinet, I said, we are just leading, but it's not our trouble alone. It's all of us, but somebody has to lead in making sure that at least the coordination is being unified and the report is being synchronized, and that can be done by one person at a time. And here, the mandate has been given to the Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources. That's why we are bringing everyone on board to make sure that at least that same springboard is being created by the ministry. But otherwise, all of us have a stake. And without action by all of us, we will all fail at the same time, and the suffering will never spare anyone, irrespective of who you are or where you are. So long as you are under this umbrella of this sun, you'll be affected. On that note, I know we have more on the agenda, so I want to take leave of you, but again to thank the Minister of Finance for leading this and saying that this is the start of a successful moment for the Gambia and all the countries who have been lucky to get the CCDR. And the Gambia, inshallah, we have not been left behind when it comes to climate actions. And again, we are going to raise with actions with respect to recommendations that have been pointed by the CCDR. So I call on all development partners as usual. Our doors are open at the level of governance. The environment is very level and friendly, and government is receptive, and the political will is very high under His Excellency, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, Mr. Adama Barrow. So therefore, I use this opportunity to say, let's join hands to deliver action for generations to come. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you once again, Honorable Minister, for your strong leadership and commitment to advancing the Gambia's climate resilience and environmental stewardship. Distinguished guests, climate action is closely tied to economic planning and sustainable growth. It is now my It is now my honor to invite the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Honorable C.D. K.M. Cater, to deliver a statement on economic dimensions of climate change and the importance of integrating climate considerations into national development planning. Honorable Minister.
Good morning, Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic, honorable colleague cabinet ministers, and I join my colleague cabinet minister of environment to thank my colleague cabinet ministers. They have come in record numbers. We have 43% of the cabinet here. So it's a whole of government approach. We are only grateful. Let's give them a round of applause to demonstrate government commitment to climate action. Development partners, World Bank, IMF, EU, FAO, and all the development partners here present. Members of the diplomatic and consular corps, private sector participants, CSOs, members of the fourth estate, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Climate change is not only an environmental challenge, it is a macroeconomic and fiscal risk for the Gambia. The findings of the country climate and development report makes this very clear. Climate change affects our economy through multiple channels, reducing agricultural productivity, lowering labor productivity due to heat stress, damaging infrastructure, and disrupting key sectors such as tourism. If left unaddressed, these impacts could reduce our GDP by 9% by 2040 on the high impact climate scenario, and by about 5% even on the more optimistic scenario. This is not a distant risk, it is a direct threat to growth, jobs, and fiscal stability. At the same time, the CCDR also shows that our development trajectory is vulnerable to climate change. Under a business as usual pathway, growth is projected to reach about 3.9% by 2050, driven largely by consumption and concentrated in low productivity sectors. But under an aspirational reform-driven pathway, growth could reach 6.5%, supported by strong private sector investment, export diversification, and structural transformation. This message is very clear. Climate resilience and economic transformation must go hand in hand. We must recognize that climate change has fiscal risks. It will increase public spending on disaster response, infrastructure, and social protection, while reducing revenues due to slow economic growth. At the same time, public debt will be put under strain due to climate-related pressures. This places a premium on sound fiscal management, prioritization, and efficiency in public spending. And this is where climate change comes in. Our public investment must now have a climate lens. There is a strong case for action. The CCDR shows that adaptation investments are highly cost-effective. With stronger adaptation measures, we can reduce the projected GDP losses significantly by more than half in some instances. In particular, investment that reduce heat stress and protect the coastal areas offers some of the highest economic return. And is very pertinent in the light of the high population density in the urban areas. But we must also be clear that adaptation requires upfront investment and must be carefully managed to preserve fiscal sustainability. Climate change has also more important social implications. It is expected to slow poverty reduction and could push tens of thousands more Gambians into poverty if not addressed by 2050. This reinforces the need for inclusive policies, including adapting social protection and targeted support to vulnerable populations. I will hasten to say that we are almost ahead of the curve because His Excellency the President's fiscal management does not leave any Gambian behind. We are, from our own budget resources, allocating more than 80 million annually to the vulnerable segment of society. This reinforces inclusive need for policies and which will include the adaptation measures that our fiscal policies contain. The scaling of the challenge is important. The CCDR estimate that the climate-related investment needs could reach in the following steps: 1.8 billion by 2030, 3.1 billion by 2040, and more than 8 billion by 2050. Given that the current levels of climate finance investments are far below this, there is a need to accelerate investment in this sector. Public resources alone cannot do it, and given our economic growth model of a private sector-led growth, the private sector should come to the fore. The private sector, therefore, should play a central role. Today, the private finance represents only a very small share of the climate financing. But with the right policies, incentives, and risk-sharing mechanisms, we can significantly increase the private sector participation, particularly in the energy, agriculture, infrastructure, and tourism sectors. To achieve this, we must focus on three priorities. First, we de-risk investments through blended finance, guarantees, and insurance schemes. And this is where the World Bank team will want to see more action from MIGA. MIGA has largely been absent in our development interaction with the bank. And as we have asked the World Bank to front-load the investment of IFC, we believe that our calls have been answered. Today, IFC has an active portfolio of more than 3 projects. So we would want the World Bank insurance arm, the MIGA, to come and accompany our private sector in de-risking our climate investment. Second, we should strengthen the enabling environment, especially the regulatory reforms, improve investment reforms, and policy coherence. This also, we are not left behind because we have modernized and revised our policies in this area and we are at advanced stage of revising our Public Finance Act to introduce and include climate aspects. And it's on the same basis that we have a second program with the IMF, which is the Resilient and Sustainability Fund, which looks at the climate dimension of our development landscape management. Third, we should build a pipeline of bankable projects, particularly those supporting the small and medium-sized enterprises, and these will focus primarily on project preparation, development, and also to develop our domestic capital market. We are not expecting the funding on climate to all come from overseas. We have to look inward. And this is the most resilient and sustainable way to anchor our development planning. As such, development of a domestic capital market is very central to our climate financing. At the same time, we are strengthening our financial systems. This includes integrating climate risk into our financial sector supervision, improving data and credit infrastructure, and expanding access to finance. The single largest impediment to our development of our private sector is access to finance. And climate action or climate investment cannot be realized without dealing with this monster. Finally, we must also enhance disaster risk financing framework, moving from a reactive to a proactive systems through contingency fund, insurance mechanism, adaptation, and social protection, which will be needed. Our insurance industry is untapped, and this is one aspect of financial architecture that we need to bring on board to accompany the private sector, help identify, manage, and mitigate some of the risks that the insurance industry can provide. And all of these are adequately contained in the CCDR report, which provides a roadmap, and it shows that while risks are real, so are the opportunities. With the right risk mix of policies, investments, and partnership, we believe the Gambia can turn climate vulnerability into a pathway for resilient, inclusive, and sustainable growth. This is not just about managing risk, it is about shaping a new prosperity-driven pathway, and one that is investment-driven and climate resilient and inclusive. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you once again, Honorable Minister, for highlighting the critical link between climate resilience and economic development. To further illustrate the key messages of the CCDR, we will now watch a short video summarizing the report's main findings.
The Gambia's Country Climate and Development Report, CCDR, is a flagship diagnostic by the World Bank Group that charts a course for climate-resilient, low-carbon development in one of Africa's smallest but most climate-vulnerable nations. Since 1960, temperatures in the Gambia have risen by 1 degree Celsius. Rainfall has dropped by nearly 30%. And without action, climate-related disasters could cost the economy up to